Okay. Okay, the time is 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to start the hearing, and then if we have any other people logging in or signing in, I think we will kind of admit them in as they come in. We'll just get the hearing started. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Marusars. I am a Deputy General Counsel for the Department of Local Government Finance. I've been appointed by the Commissioner to act as a hearing officer for this hearing. Assisting me today will be Emily Chrysler, General Counsel for the Department. We are here today to conduct an administrative hearing pursuant to the laws of the state of Indiana, as found in Indiana Code Section 6-1.1-41-7 through 9. This is with respect to an adopted cumulative capital development fund by Floyd County. On May 23rd, 2023, the Floyd County Commissioners adopted an ordinance to establish a CCD fund, cumulative capital development fund, under Indiana Code 36-9-14.5. The proposed fund rate was not to exceed 0.0333 cents on each $100 of assessed valuation for the 2023 payable 2024 taxes. According to the adopted ordinance, the fund was approved by the Board of Commissioners by a vote of 2-0. Subsequently, a notice of adoption was published on May 26, 2023. This hearing is being held because at least 25 taxpayers in the county filed a timely petition on June 23rd, 2023 with the county auditor objecting to the capital development fund. Notice of the time and place of this hearing was given to the county auditor and the first 10 taxpayers whose names appeared on the petition in accordance with Indiana Code 6-1.1-41-8. So the purpose of this hearing is going to be primarily for the receipt of testimony from those interested in providing testimony before and against the fund. I will say at the outset, no decision regarding the remonstrance or the fund itself will be made at this hearing. This is going to be primarily for the receipt of evidence. I will be making procedural decisions, or I may make some procedural decisions before and during the course of the hearing. But just so you know that no final determination with respect to the fund or its remonstrance, the remonstrance against it will be made at this hearing. So within due time after the conclusion of this hearing, the Department of Local Government Finance will certify approval, disapproval, or modification of the fund to the county auditor within a reasonable amount of time. I will make a recommendation to the commissioner on whether this fund should be approved, disapproved, or modified based on ordinances and resolutions and any evidence collected during this hearing. The commissioner will then make a final determination in accordance with Indiana Code 6-1.1-41-9. So the order of the presentation will be as follows. First, per our notice provided to the county auditor and the taxpayers, the first 10 taxpayers listed on the petition, we requested that people who wanted to testify at this hearing, that they send a written notice to me prior to noon on yesterday, August 29th. Accordingly, persons who have timely submitted their intent to testify will be allowed to do so. Persons who have not done so, or they may have notified me and expressed that they don't wish to attend or to provide testimony, whether you are speaking or not, you may still submit written statements to the department. And I'll provide some details on how to do that throughout the course of this hearing. So the order of presentation for this hearing is going to be as follows. First, evidence and testimony will be presented by those objecting to the fund. Secondly, evidence and testimony will be presented by those in favor. I'll now go over some of the general procedures that will be observed. So as you know, this is a virtual or teleconference hearing. If you are if you are logged in either by your computer or by phone, please mute your phone or device when you're not speaking. I know I see some people are in the, I believe it's the county conference room. I understand the mic, especially by the lectern, maybe a perpetually hot mic. We're just trying to make sure that nobody who is not given the opportunity or is not speaking or presenting or providing testimony, that they're not being heard or they're not speaking when it's not their time to do so. And if I hear anyone either speaking or there may be some feedback, I will ask to put your device on mute. And if there is any feedback, if you are speaking, if it is your time to speak and there may be some feedback, we'll try to address it. We want to make sure that you're being able to given the opportunity to speak. So this hearing is being recorded. Please speak loudly and clearly so that we may record your comments for the record. One person at a time will be called to present evidence. When you are called up, please state your name and address clearly before offering comments. And if you are, I recognize there's some who are representing the county, if you may state your position with the county, either as elected or hired official. I expect all speakers to be truthful and state only those facts of which they have personal knowledge. Keep all comments focused on the main issue that this hearing is for, which is the CCD fund. I ask you not to raise any issues unrelated to the Capital Development Fund. And if you do start to veer off into kind of the tangential issues, I will ask you to refocus. Avoid repeating comments that have been offered by previous speakers. Issues need only be presented once to be considered. You may simply state that you agree with prior comments or give general support for a particular view. But again, please don't try not to just simply repeat what has been said by others before. Be kind and courteous to each speaker so that all may be heard. Again, do not speak out of turn. We will we have the ability to mute your microphone if you are, at least from our end. If we hear you when it's not your turn to speak. Again, and persons on the call may not ask questions to the person testifying or vice versa. As a hearing officer, I reserve the right to ask any clarifying questions as necessary. It's the responsibility of those offering testimony to raise issues and provide supporting evidence. And if you have prepared written remarks, you may submit those as evidence within 14 days following this hearing. Please also, and I emphasize that if you're going to provide additional testimony, please let it be in writing. Do not call me or any other employee of the department after the hearing is concluded to offer testimony. Additional testimony may only be provided to me in writing in the manner of that I'm going to get to shortly. I will emphasize that anyone from either those in support or those who are against will have the opportunity to submit written evidence to the department. And so, I guess at this time, I'll go ahead and, before we go to testimony, I'll say a couple of other things. First, I don't intend on imposing a particular time limit for any one person, but I do want to make sure that you're staying on point. You know, you're succinct with your remarks, so you don't repeat yourself. If you're veering off into tangents or whatever, I want you to stay focused on the CCD fund and the reason for the remonstrance. The reason for the remonstrance. I want to give everybody their opportunity to speak their piece and say what they want to say, either for or against. And I may ask some questions. I will try to wait until after you've concluded your remarks before I start asking questions. But I just want everybody just to be aware that I want everybody to be succinct and to the point with their remarks. And then finally, With respect to providing additional testimony or additional written statements after the hearing, you can provide it in one or two ways. First, by email to me. Emily, if let me get a moment, can you put my email address in the chat box? I'll spell it out to, it's D as in David, M as in Mary, A as in Adam, R as in Robert, U as in Uncle. Couldn't think of a first name that began with U, sorry. S as in Sam, A as in Adam, R as in Robert, Z as in Zachary. So that's David Marusars at DLGF, stands for Department of Local Government Finance, .in.gov. You may also submit to it by mail. Our address is, yeah, Emily, please. The Indiana Government Center North, room 1058B, 100 North Senate Avenue, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46204. I said 14 days following this hearing, so I believe that is end of the day on September 13. I believe that it's 2 Wednesdays from now. So September 13. So with that, if there are there any questions, any questions about how this hearing is going to be conducted? I'll give it a minute. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and start with the testimony. Like I said, we're going to start with remonstrators. I'm just going to go ahead and first and list off the people who have of the remonstrators who have indicated their intent. And this is just in the order in which I saw their notices. It's not in any particular order, excuse me. It's not in any particular order. If there's a preferred order that they wish to give, that's fine. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. First, I have Joseph Moore, Jim Freiberger, Dale Mann, Dennis Conkle, Daniel Ducharme. And if I mispronounce any names, I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anybody's names. Elaine Jenkins, and then those who indicated their support and favor, they're generally from the county government. Al Knabel, Denise Conkle, Matt Friesch, and Rick Fox. And again, too, if you don't want it, if you don't wish to speak, that's totally fine. Just let me know. Just you still have an opportunity to provide written statements. Okay. See some may have been some feedback there. Again, you have the opportunity to provide written statements. So if you don't wish to testify, in fact, I believe, yeah, okay. So I also want to recognize too that before the hearing, Carol Lamb, Dennis Welsh, John Dennison, and Lois Hertog also provided me written statements in advance. I wanted to recognize them too. Provided me written statements. So just want to recognize them before we begin. So with that, Joseph Moore, if you're available to speak. Oh, sorry, Joseph, before we begin, I think your mic is muted. Can't hear. Oh. There we go. I think, hold on. No, I still can't hear you. Oh. David let's see, David McAfee. That I think that's where we're hearing the feedback from.
It looks like David just exited. He
Okay.
joined, so.
Maybe join. Okay. We'll get back to Joseph. I want to go down the list. We'll come back to you. Jim Freiberger.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Dale, Joseph. We just heard you.
Device. Okay.
Okay. We can hear you. Yeah. Go ahead, Joseph.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. My name is Joseph P.J. Moore. I live at 1344 Edwardsville Galena Road in Georgetown Township. And by way of administrative, I think Elaine Jenkins is going to move up to second place because she has to leave early.
Okay.
Anyhow, okay. Okay, if you have read the detailed list of the 4 objections that were included to with the petition, I won't reiterate or repeat those. Did you have a chance to look at that?
Yes.
Okay. All I would say is at number 3, to add to number 3 there, about their overspending and not living within the budget. So far, we've only gotten promises or intentions to get an efficiency study, but that's one of the things we really believe should be required before a brand new multi-million-dollar tax. But that said, pertaining to the first point about the notice, what good is the code requirement of public notice if they're allowed to circumvent it by publishing it in unreasonably and unnecessarily vague and confusing language that effectively renders it useless to the public? The citing the wrong statute section or code section prevents anybody reading it from knowing what the project is. Only if the few members of the public who attended the commissioners meeting when they discussed it could have selected that the intended purpose was just a one item from the large list in 36.914.5-2. Second point, that 2 commissioners stated beforehand that they're only voting for the levy for the sole purpose of the courthouse project. That's 36-9-14 on that list. But this levy, as voted, allows for spending on many other projects by these and future boards. This levy should not only cite just the single intended project, but should also have a sunset clause for when the levy is no longer required for that project. And I'll be glad to send you, if you want, the links to this and the specific places in the official meetings from the.
Yeah, you said you were. Oh, sorry. Could you repeat that? I think you cut out shortly.
I'll be glad to send you the links to their official video meeting minutes and with the marked specific places where they stated that intention. Okay.
Okay.
They also had interviews in the newspaper regarding this project. The commissioners, they also discussed the need for the courthouse project, but even though that backs up the fact that it's supposed to have been focused, targeted, but the levy itself is overbroad. Again, the courthouse is only one item on the laundry list there. So it can be used and abused in the future. And if my finish up for that is, if the CCD fund is not disallowed by the DLGF, at a minimum, it's got to be corrected and limited solely to the stated intended purpose of the courthouse project, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
And let me know if you want those links. You can let me know in an hour by email. Elaine Jenkins is going to speak now.
Yeah, I think that would be, yeah, I would like those, please, if you can.
I will get them.
Elaine Jenkins?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, thanks. Thanks for letting me move up. I have to pick up my great-grandkids in a few minutes.
Okay.
I'm speaking on behalf of maybe senior citizens, which I am one. I'm 76, and also on behalf of renters. I have a 3-plex apartment in New Albany that was built that when my son was 17, he's 55. And I have 3 renters. And when taxes are raised and things are reassessed, I do not pass it on to my renters because we can't afford it. I have a 90-year-old lady in my middle apartment, and she just had a water leak. So I didn't pass. So I paid for everything, and I didn't raise her rent, of course. And the city dug some really nice places. I'll show you a picture. Can you see me? You see that?
Can you raise it up a little bit more? Can you raise it up a bit more? Yes, I see it now.
Okay, this is around the corner from me, and one of the ladies, this is my apartment. One of the ladies rented from me for 24 years was able to get one of those, and her rent went down. I was charging her $5.75, but her rent went down. She was on Section 8, so they told me how much I could charge her. So I'm speaking of landlords too, because when taxes go up, unless, like me, I just don't pass them up, it's just less for me, but if you do pass them on to your renters, it's really difficult for them just to find, and in my case, and other things like that. So I just wanted to say that because we need to think of all of our citizens, 0.0003 doesn't sound like very much, but it could be when you add other things in. Any questions?
Could you clarify that last point? You said that you need to think of
Renters,
renters. Okay, so it's like
Rent-
tenants. Okay.
tenants, yes, because
Okay.
a lot of them are on fixed income and it doesn't go up.
Okay. All right. No further questions. Thank you. Thank you, Elaine.
Okay. Dennis. Dennis Cock will be the next speaker.
Yeah, Dale Mann.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You know, I'm Dennis Conkle. I'm probably one of the only full-time farmers left in the county. And as I came to this meeting, leaving the field, I had to think and stop and really wonder why I'm coming here. And I'll tell you why. You know, I'm a man of the land. I make a living from the land. I've got land that has 6 generations, one farm 6 generations, one farm 4 generations. And I have to think to myself, you know, it wasn't just very few years ago we had a pandemic around. Food, people were scared about their food and where their food was going to come from. And, you know, as we continue to take away the profit margin from agriculture, we're going to force these farmers to liquidate their land, which what the county's faced with right now is rapid growth. But what they don't understand is that once we decide to give it up, then the rapid growth really continues. You know, we buy everything retail, sell everything wholesale, and that profit margin is getting tight. We have just had a FAR district imposed on us, you know, and as a farmer, I hear the saying that, well, it's only going to cost you $100 or $200. Well, you know, as a farmer, we have to have land. And unfortunately, the state of Indiana doesn't segregate real estate from residential. And therefore, that fire district cost me $1,300. And our county wants to increase our stormwater fees. As a farmer, we naturally are the best stewards that the county has, but yet we get penalized for that. And they didn't want to just dump.
Yep.
Hospital, you know, if that city county building was in that dire of a need, then I remember the commissioners buying all brand new county trucks. Well, you know, did we need to buy all brand new county trucks at one time, or could we use some of that money to fix up the city county building? I don't think it's fair for the working people in America to have to foot the bill for unthought through procedures in our county. And the buck stops here. We, the people who pay the bills, have got to be able to make a living, and we can't give it to our county elected officials all the time. Any questions?
Okay. I don't have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Conkle.
Jim Freiberger will be speaking next.
Okay, Jim?
How you doing today? I'm
Doing
Jim
good.
Freiberger. I live on 7383 Bannock Road, Floyd, Indiana. I'm newly elected county council member from District 2. I'm testifying on behalf of the Floyd County taxpayers to rescind the recent cumulative capital development fund the Floyd County Commissioners passed on May 24th. Do want to make it known that I'm not opposed to a renovation system upgrade of the current administrative office. The current plan for a $35 million bonded project is necessary. Kind of want to give a little history of how we got to this point. The building project planned by the commissioners was originally even larger. The Floyd County Council attended a joint meeting with the county commissioners on February 17th of this year. The county commissioners wanted the council to sign off on a resolution to move forward with the new proposed New Albany-Floyd County Building Authority's preliminary plan. The cost for a newly proposed administrative building on Grant Line Road was estimated between $25 and $30 million. Additionally, the current city-county building on House Square was to be refurbished and converted to a justice center as an estimated cost of $30 million. Floyd County Council voted 4-3 in favor of a motion to table the resolution of Floyd County Council to advance and design the construction for both the renovation and its conversion into a judicial center, not to exceed days. Most council members the Grant Line project was too expensive and not at all necessary. Since the commissioners couldn't get full support of the council for the project, on March 7th, the Floyd County Commissioners voted 2-1 in favor of the resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Floyd County to terminate the judicial center scoping agreement. After that, the Floyd County Commissioners and councils held another joint meeting on April 11th, where the reading group provided a handout with information on a new building project proposal. The intent was to generate $35 million for a judicial center renovation project, along with a proposed LIT tax to cover the estimated $1.58 million deficit for the county. It would also require annual silo interest draws of $885,000 to help pay back a 25-year bond that would be required for the building project. So the annual lease payment would be approximately $2.8 million per year. Once again, there was concern from the county council that total tax increases were too excessive, considering the back-to-back years of property taxes we've experienced of over 10% that homeowners receive. Floyd County Commissioners and Council held another joint meeting on April 21st. I've added a 20-minute video clip from that section to you recently. They discussed the newly revised CCD proposal. The revised proposal also included additional draws from the commissioners and council's legacy silos to help offset the cost for the proposed $35 million bond commissioners intend to pursue to cover the cost of the administrative renovation project. Commissioner Al Knable estimated potential cost of renovating the administrative building at $25 million or possibly less. Denise Conkle, County Council member, thought the cost would be between $25 and $28 million, but that the additional funds of the proposed $35 million bond would be used to provide additional offices for administrative staff, as well as temporary relocation during the construction. County Council member Danny Short pointed out that the actual cost of the county would be $70 million, with the actual payments amounts over the 25 years. The plan proposed to generate $1.6 million in revenues to help pay for the 25-year lease by passing this cumulative capital development fund at a maximum rate as listed as 0.333%. The county was still going to need to come up with an additional $1.2 million in funding each year to offset the proposed lease payment of $2.8 million for the bond. Denise Conkle, Commissioner Tim Kamer proposed to draw down funds in spend rate out of the two legacy silos created for the sale of a hospital. The proposal was to draw down $700,000 per year from the fund designated from the county commissioners for capital projects. In addition to that, an additional $300,000 to $400,000 would need to be drawn.
Mr. Freiberger? Seem to be cutting out. I will say for the benefit of everybody here that, before you resume your remarks, you cut out, Mr. Freiberger, about 30 seconds ago. I will say for the benefit of everybody here that he provided, Mr. Freiberger provided me his statements and then some additional like videos and stuff that he referenced. So sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Freiberger. Please go right ahead, resume your remarks.
Okay, get back to Commissioner John Schoenberg said that the current silo funds the commissioners have are already committed to capital projects for the next 10 years, included IT systems, replacement of dump trucks and other equipment. He said he stated then he would not vote in favor of any new tax if pulling these funds were part of the plan. At that point, I stated myself that I felt any project over 18 million should go to the taxpayers in a referendum. I felt the commissioners were trying to avoid that process by the proposal they introduced. I said this is a bad time to create a new tax for the county, as repeated homeowners experience 2 years of property taxes over 10%. County council leadership is also proposing a new LIT tax to cover an estimated $1.6 million deficit annually. Taxpayers couldn't afford another new tax. I felt it was commissioners' responsibility to show the need for the funds being requested. The project was too large for what it really needed. There should be a needs assessment first before approving a new CCD tax. I felt this project would be done less than 20 million and all the administrative offices could be kept at the original site. Even the building authority superintendent, Chuck Edwards, provided a $10 million estimate to cost to upgrade facilities in a previous public meeting. Tim Kamer, commissioner, then stated, if put through the system, referendums, the vast majority of the time will fail. What happens when that bombs out? The county council was then provided a resolution at our monthly May 9th council meeting. The commissioners requested that we support the resolution to create a new cumulative capital development fund, but no dollar amount was provided. Council voted 4-3 in a motion to table the approval to our next joint meeting with commissioners on May 12th. At that meeting, the commissioners then decided they no longer needed the council's approval, decided they would move forward with approving the new CCD tax on their own. Commissioners Alcom, Abel, and John Schoenberg did approve the new cumulative tax fund on May 24th. I am opposed to this new CCD tax being approved until the commissioners provide a specified building plans with costs included as based on true needs assessment. I feel this project can be kept below 18 million and where it can be done on a separate bond designated to the building project only with no other county assets pledged towards it. I, as a taxpayer, am opposed to commissioners wanting to designate $700,000 of their silo funds each year, because they will take away funds from needed county projects. However, if they choose it, that would generate another $17.5 million over the 25 years, which could reduce the CCD tax rate in half. Council now, the Floyd County Council is currently facing continuing growing budget deficits of over $2 million and just recently approved a new judicial LIT tax, even against overwhelming opposition by the taxpayers. So I'm glad there's a process appeal for the CCD tax. There's now legitimate concern for our future EMS coverage for our current provider, New Chapel, as well as response time and coverage improvements that need to be made. We can't commit our council silo funds at $300,000 to $400,000. We need them to cover our own budget shortfalls. I feel the commissioners need to scale back and justify the building project to the public. The CCD tax by the commissioners needs to be rescinded or declined by the state for the best interest of Floyd County taxpayers. And that is all I had. Do you have any questions?
Yes. So just at the outset, and just to kind of summarize a good part of your remarks, you don't believe that the renovation, you're not opposed to the renovation, but the way in which they're using the CCD fund, you referenced a bond issue, so the county is planning on issue a bond for purposes of this?
Documentation from the Reedy Group for $35 million bond I plan to pursue with this project.
Okay, and that would be And that would be, and your objection is that it's something that needs to be done through a referendum.
I think it does. I think it can also be done at a lower dollar rate where they can be done, you know, at a conservative lower dollar rate.
Okay. Below meaning it's below the amount that makes it necessary to go to referendum. Or just a lower amount, just in general.
Yeah, currently the CCD tax rate is what we're going to estimate generate 20 million revenue, approximately.
Okay. Did you have kind of an alternative proposal for how the bond issue could be done at a lower level or lower amount?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I think this administrative building can all be done in one facility. They don't need additional offices. I think they're expansion of too many offices in this development. I prefer to go back to needs assessment and do a true renovation and not expand this project as large as they're intending.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Freiberger. Thank you. And like I said, the stream kind of froze on you. Mr. Freiberger provided me all of the testimony, his written remarks, his testimony, and then provided some additional information like the video that he referenced and whatnot. Actually, I apologize. I do have one more question. It just came to me. You referenced a statement by, I think it was Tim Keemer.
Yeah, previous commissioner, talking about how they didn't want to pursue a referendum. Is that something that is going to be included in that video that you provided to me yesterday, or is that something that you can provide to me, like a written, like the minutes or video evidence of him making this? It's in that April 21st video in that 20-minute segment I gave you.
April 21st?
I think that's the.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
Further questions? Dale Mann.
All right, Dale Mann here, live in 2635 Henry Out Road, Georgetown, Indiana. I don't want to repeat a lot. I tried to mark off my list. We did have a major property tax increase this year on everybody. Some people went up $600-700 for their home. The next year, we got a list that we're going to have new reassessments. My assessment on just my property, I own a small farm, went up $34,000. That's the reassessment for next year. That's a major concern to our taxpayers out there now. And then the council just passed the LIT tax. I don't want to repeat that. But what I hear out there most, I run a Facebook page. What I run out there most is what happened to the hospital money. And here's what's coming up now. The hospital sold in 2016 and 17, 150 million. Was the city county building in such good shape then that they didn't figure out to use some of that money to redo the city county building then? It wasn't even thought of. They spent the money on their once, the hospital money on their once, which like Hammersmith Park, Noble Park, Regional Park, and several other things. They never even thought about fixing the city county building when they had all that money available. And it was the wants and not needs sort of thing. Then the size of the scope, they want to do the city county building. The city of New Albany left the one whole floor empty out of a 4-floor building plus basement. And then the sheriff department, the New Albany Police Department is leaving a vacancy of 9,000 square foot. So that's one whole floor plus 9,000 square foot space available for them to use. And they don't even want to talk about using it for administration. And we also had the opportunity with all the ARP money that come in during the COVID. We could have used that part of that $12 million to do part of that city county building then. None of that was used then. They passed it all around, but it could have been used to redo the city county building then. Maybe not enough to do it all, but a good start. And then here one of the last things, our county spends money like it doesn't, there's no tomorrow. They just give bid, they put out a proposal to get a bid for a 36,000 square foot building for Noble Park. Where's that money coming from? 36,000 square foot building, you're talking in the millions, but we don't have no money. They have to ask the taxpayers for money to redo a building that they had money to do, and they didn't use it. They used it for wants and not needs. And another thing our county has got a lot of assets. One of them is the property on Grant Line Road, which is worth millions. But we got to ask the taxpayers for money to fix the building we got, when we got assets of millions. We got the camp property on Grant Line Road, we got the Santine Park in New Albany, we got the Rice Building in New Albany, we got the Hammersmith Park in New Albany. And we got many more that the assets that I don't even know how many we got. But our county spends money like it's no tomorrow, and that they come to the taxpayers. This will be the third time that they come to the taxpayers this year for more money. The stormwater got turned down, thank goodness. But the IT tax passed, and now they're wanting this tax to pass. And I just think our county is not spending money wisely. They're getting to the wants and not the needs of this county and the taxpayers of this county, and the taxpayers are getting tired of it. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't have any questions. Thank you. I also have Daniel Ducharme.
He's not here.
Okay.
He'll do it.
Okay.
He'll send it to you later.
Oh, sorry, can you repeat?
He'll send you a letter later if he hadn't already.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else with your group that wanted to speak? Okay, just want to make sure everybody has a chance. That is all the people in remonstrance or remonstrating against the CCD fund that I had listed. I will now move to those in support. Let me pull up. Apologize. There was a particular order. I just got an email. I got an email earlier. Let's see. I'll start with the Al Knabel, and likewise, if there's anybody else that you think needs to prioritize speaking, that's fine. Just I want to start with Al Knabel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mario and Ms. Chrysler. We really appreciate the opportunity to explain our position. I thank everyone on both sides of this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I appreciate everyone on both sides of this position for taking the time to be here today. I'm Al Knabel, 1301 Riddle Road, New Albany, Indiana. I am the current president of the commissioners, and today I speak with their consent on the behalf of all three commissioners. So I also speak for Mr. John Schellenberger and Mr. Jason Sharp. Over the past several years, various Floyd County government officials have formally and informally identified the need, not the want, for major reconstruction, remodeling, and expansion of judicial and administrative facilities. I myself took office January 1. I don't know what transpired with hospital monies before I got here and some of the other points that were made, but regardless of how we arrived at this position, we now have a judicial center that, if not repaired in the near future, will probably be shut down because of code violations, and then we'll be forced to, through judicial mandate, to find out a way out of what will become a crisis. Unfortunately, no way to fund such projects has been identified and or established until recently. The current Board of Commissioners identified the establishment of a cumulative capital development fund as a viable, wise, responsible mechanism for funding this need, and also as the funding mechanism that would have the least impact on the citizens of Floyd County. Floyd County is currently but one of 10 counties in Indiana without a CCD tax in place. I believe we are currently the 8th lowest taxed county in the state of Indiana. Implementation of this tax would take us up to the 13th lowest rate within the county. As these projects fall within the statutory provisions laid out by the state of Indiana on this matter, and also owing to the fact that we have complied with implementation of the CCD. We will continue to comply with all rules and procedures required going forward and utilizing the CCD money. I now humbly ask on behalf of all three commissioners of Floyd County that we be allowed to proceed in our endeavor, which will ultimately benefit the welfare of the citizens of Floyd County. I thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you, Mr. Knable. To one of the remonstrator's objections has to do with the notice of adoption stating that it's for purposes for all uses. I'm just going to read it straight from the notice of adoption. In fact, it's from is actually in the adoption ordinance itself. The purpose of the CCD fund is for all uses as set out in Indiana Code 36-9-14.5. As was previously mentioned, there are a lot of different uses or a lot of different purposes under code for which the CCD fund. So why was the decision made to establish the CCD fund for all purposes as laid out, set out in 36-9-14.5, and not specifically stating for purposes of the judicial center or any of the other specified purposes?
Yeah, the impetus or the chief rationale for going forward with this was the judicial center. We thought the best way to put this forward was going to be to actually state the state's statute by the book with regards to this. So we fully believe that the use of this fund and its proceeds for the development of the judicial center and new administrative offices clearly falls within the confines of the state statute. So it wasn't really done by any intent or commission. We just thought that the best way to do it was to go ahead and state the statutes back for the record. And I have stated publicly that while I'm in this seat, those funds will go towards that. I mean, if we're going to have to bond something out over 20 years, that will more than exceed my term in office.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that's. I mean, I'm not going to. The remonstrators have already spoken, so I don't want to put words in their mouths per se. But I think the concern, at least with respect to this particular objection, is that by having such a broad use laid out in the ordinance, and like you said, is this CCD fund will be in place for longer, for long after you or anyone else on the council of the commissioners would be in office. The concern is that it essentially becomes not necessarily for the purpose that the county sold the taxpayers on for purposes of the CCD fund. And so I guess if I can get kind of your response to that, kind of appreciate the statement that you don't intend on using it for any other purpose outside of what you've said it would be. But can you kind of respond to that concern?
I mean, my response would be that I would think it would have been disingenuous for us not to have put forward what the fund was legally able to be used for. I did not even believe that it was within our authority to narrow the purpose for that to just that particular project and put that forward. So as the CCD establishment clause or statute states that it can be used for all of those purposes, we thought it best to list all of those purposes and then publicly state our intent for using it. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but again, I don't know. I don't even know from a legal standpoint if we could have curtailed that in the establishment of our particular ordinance.
Right, and I don't know if commissioner's attorney's here, Mr. Fox. So I think it would be that kind of gets more into the legal arguments, and so I don't want to. I'll reserve those questions for later. Thank you, Mr. Knable.
Thank you.
Okay. Denise Conkle, Council President.
Yes, Denise Conkle, Council President. my mic's not on. Denise Conco, council president. I would like, if it's okay, if we could let Matt Frishy from the Reedy Group speak first, and then if I could follow up after he speaks. He has advised, the Reedy Group has advised us on all the financial aspects of the CDC tax and the bonding that we anticipate doing for the renovation of the city county building. So Matt, if
Okay.
you wouldn't mind, and if it's okay
Yeah.
with the DLGF.
Yeah,
to speak first.
that's fine. Mr. Frisch?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate the time to speak. My name is Matt Frishy. I'm a registered municipal advisor working for Reedy Financial Group, who serves as the county's financial and municipal advisor. Like I said, a whole host of things have been talked about. I would like to elaborate on a few things. And I guess the first thing, since David, you were just referencing, and by no means am I offering legal advice, and I'm not a lawyer, clarify that, but just kind of the intent behind, I think part of the purpose as to why there wasn't a specification of specifically in the ordinance that this tax would be for this project. At the end of the day, you know, CCD rate is especially with recent legislation being passed, it's a rate that we establish at 3 1/4 cents. And that rate remains constant from you know, after establishment. The fluctuation of the revenue is based on increases in assessed value. So there is, you know, theoretically, there's a point in time where we get that this CCD rate would be generating additional revenue above and beyond what is actually needed for a potential bond payment. So to say that this rate is only going to be used for this bond payment and this project, really, we can't specify that. We don't know what future assessed value is going to do. Also, too, coupled with that, you know, when we look at the establishment of this fund, we, first of all, for the Judicial Center, for the Criminal Justice Center, whatever you want to call it, we've had multiple engineers look at that facility. The county's own building authority has looked at that facility and deemed that this project would be north of $30 million, north of $25 million. The most recent estimates were $35 million for that project. And the building authority will also tell you that just a simple renovation and patch of the current facility would then result in multiple millions of dollars annually going towards this. So it would compound the county's issues rather than alleviating those issues. So some of the other things I wanted to touch base on, you know, in regards to some of the other comments about property taxes rising, I definitely sympathize with property taxpayers. My property tax bill went up from last year to this year. However, that is not a result of the county's rate increasing. That is a result of a change in assessment practices within the state of Indiana. Indiana is historically underassessed, and we are nowhere near market value. So that is the goal of assessors, is to get closer to market value. I will say over the past 10 years, the county's rate has remained stagnant in a time where increased costs are coming across the board. The county's rate has remained constant. So the taxpayers in Floyd County have been benefiting from that stagnant rate, as opposed to the county raising rates in other areas. So I think that
I would
all
just like
those
to
things.
ask, I would just like to ask one question real quick, if you don't mind.
Well, could you let Mr. Frishy conclude his remarks? And I'll let
Okay.
you ask.
Go for
Mr.
it.
Frishy, please conclude.
Yeah. So I guess too, you know, back to kind of the purpose, you know, at this point in time, with this project being very preliminary, you know, as I'm sure you guys at DLGF know, when we establish a CCD rate, that is a 2-year implementation process before we get that full rate. Knowing that we have this large judicial center project coming up, knowing that we will need to issue bonds for that project, we took a deep dive into the county's financials, and we saw that, you know, that there is no, in the current county's budget, there is no additional revenue to fund a $25 million plus bond. There's nothing. So from that perspective, we need to look at how do we increase revenue? How do we establish an additional revenue stream to pay for a bond of a project of this size. So, we looked at lit as a potential income tax and property tax. At the end of the day, property tax increase has the least impact to taxpayers across the county. I'm not saying that some may experience more or less, but overall, the average, there is a lesser impact for us to raise a property tax rate as opposed to a lit rate. So those are kind of just some of the backgrounds. And like I said, we have a full presentation and financials and impacts of this rate increase that we can provide you, David, and I will definitely be emailing you those in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Frischie. So I guess I do have some questions for you.
Yes.
First of all, you said the CCD fund rate is by law to be phased in over 2 years. Are you aware that the commissioners adopted an ordinance in their ordinance that the CCD fund rate is not to exceed 0.0333 cents per
Yes.
$100? And
That's
are you
actually the
aware-
max I believe a county can levy, correct?
Yes, but you just said that it's phased in over 2 years, meaning that it cannot be, and I'll cite the statute, it's 36-9-14.5 I want to say 8, might be 6. This Indiana law says that when the CCD fund is first established in the first year, its rate is 1 2/3 cents. So 0.0167 cents per $100 of assessed value. So, which is it? Did they adopted an ordinance that says 3 1/3 cents, which is the maximum, but by law, they're not allowed the maximum for the first year, correct?
Correct. It is a 2-year phase-in, and
Okay.
we advise communities all across the state, that they elected in their ordinance to, essentially what they're stating is that we are electing to, establish this rate at the max allowable by a county.
But the max allowable by county under statute is 0.0167 cents in the first year. Let me ask you this. So are you aware if the county has not previously had a cumulative capital development fund?
Am I aware that they have not?
Yes. Have they had
Yes,
this
correct.
before?
They
Okay.
have not had this.
So
rate.
it's brand new. So conceivably, theoretically, page 24 is going to be the first year they have the tax for the CCD fund, conceivably.
Correct.
So the rate would be 0.167, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Correct. Thank you. Correct. Thank you. The next question I had to do with you say that the intent of the fund is to allow it generating additional revenue, and is that there's no guarantee that it'll pay bond payments related to the judicial center, for example. Why not just then impose, why not just impose a debt service levy? Well, what did you look at whether the debt service levy or whether to issue a bond and then have a debt service fund levy for it?
Yes. So, one of the reasons why, like I said, if we were to, based on numbers we were getting back from engineers, and numbers we have received from engineers, this amount of this project would actually need additional, like I said, this CCD rate, the full rate would not be in the beginning years. Like I said, I know AV can fluctuate the revenues in future years, but in the beginning years after establishment of this rate, the revenue that we were projecting was still not sufficient to meet the full debt service of the payment. Therefore, rather than doing a specific debt service levy that would be above a 3 1/3 cent rate, we decided let's go with a CCD rate that it would be lower than what the actual total debt service payment would be. And then we can look to find additional revenue within the county's budget or other areas to help make up that difference in the needed debt service on an annual basis. So essentially the CCD rate, you know, like I said, in the beginning years, I can't project what AVs are going to do, but in the beginning years, it does not meet the level of debt service that we need, which is why, like I said, at the end of the day, the county, the council, the commissioners, their main goal is how do we build this project with the least amount of impact to our taxpayers? Rather than doing a full property tax rate, we decided, let's look at doing a partial property tax rate, a CCD rate, which is, as Al mentioned, you know, implemented by 82 other counties across the state. Let's utilize that rate and then look for our additional revenue in other areas.
Okay. So you also mentioned that you don't want to use lit for purposes of this project of the, I'm trying to keep all the various, what was referenced before. I'm just going to refer to the Judicial Center. Forgive me if I'm leaving out any other details, but on both sides of
Yeah, of
this.
course.
But you talked about not wanting to use lit, but didn't and again, this is outside the scope of the CCD fund. I don't want to dwell on it, but you mentioned, since you mentioned it, not using lit, the county just imposed a judicial lit. Now, admittedly, that's for
Operations of the jail.
and so what else?
and
What else was looked at and not considered?
Yeah, so you know, like you said earlier, really wanted to focus this on the Judicial Center, the CCD specific. But if we're opening it up a little bit, also the other thing that the county is facing is 1.8 million compounding annually of budget deficits. So not only are we trying to, you know, make this Judicial Center project work, because we're being told that if we do nothing and try to put a Band-Aid on it, it's going to cost the county more over the long term and annually than actually redoing the facility. On top of that, the county is faced with a $1.8 million budget deficit. So we need to make up that revenue in some way, shape, or form. So that is why the lit was done to pay for jail, you know, operations, to free up funds elsewhere to help manage and mitigate that budget deficit.
Okay. So, and I have a couple more questions for you, Mr. Frischie. I don't want to, and I'm one of the questions I'm going to have for others as well. So don't think I'm just picking on you.
No,
yeah. Yeah, it has to do with the statement that Mr. Freiberger in particular mentioned about not pursuing a referendum. What is your response? What is your response to that? Did the county actually, to your knowledge, consider whether this actually had to be subject to a referendum?
Yes, to my knowledge, there were discussions about the referendum process. Obviously, when we're talking about a large project, that's always going to come up. You know, how do we mitigate any of those, you know, concerns, right? I think, you know, a lot of, you know, when you open up, you know, as we've received advice from, you know, bond counsel and legal counsel as well, when you open up the door for referendum, you know, you're posing a large project, which, you know, a lot of people don't have intimate knowledge of, and the inner workings of the project to potentially get shot down. And then if that were to happen, then we're either farther down the road where we can't move forward with a bond. And now we have to look at the Band-Aid solution that's going to cost the county longer in the long term.
Is that also why they didn't consider a debt service levy?
Correct, because the debt service, you know, hand in fist, right? The debt service levy, if you're doing a specific debt service levy for this project, if I'm talking a $25 million project, well, that's above the referendum threshold. So if we were to do a specific property tax rate for that, not only would it tax people more than what is necessary, but then also, like I said, it would be subject to referendum, larger and longer legal process, with the potential that we get through the process and the project gets killed.
Okay, and just to be sure, you don't have to necessarily respond, but just to be sure, for everybody who's aware, the referendum is an opportunity for taxpayers and registered voters in the political subdivision to approve or deny the project being proposed if the property tax levy is high enough or meets the statutory thresholds, excuse me. Last question, Mr. Friesian, then I'll let you go. You made some comments earlier about the assessment in Floyd County being under assessed. Are you a certified assessor appraiser?
No, I'm not.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Friesi. No
Yeah, of
further
course.
questions. Ms. Jenkins? Ms. Jenkins, please.
Spoke second.
No.
Lincoln spoke earlier, yes.
Muted or not?
Oh, Elaine?
Hear me?
Elaine spoke
Hello?
second.
Yes, can you hear me?
Mr. Moore, what is it?
If you remember, Ms. Jenkins was bumped up and actually spoke second because.
I am sorry. I am so sorry. I'm getting my names mixed up. I apologize. Denise Conkle. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everybody.
And
I'm
I
sorry,
do have.
It's okay.
Mr. Moore, if you have any
Yeah.
questions, could you wait until once we're
I
done?
will. I'm gonna hit you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Conkle, again, I apologize.
Again, I'll just let the Rick Fox speak
Okay.
for the commissioners.
Okay, so you want Mr. Fox to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, Mr. Fox?
Yes, sir. Thank you, and appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you here at our hearing. I'm going to get into the weeds, at least in terms of a few of the issues that have been brought up. The first issue that the petitioners laid out was that the notice was so vague as to be fatally flawed with regards to the newspaper. And they take issue with the fact in terms of citing the statute. And I'd like to cite a published case, Board of Commissioners versus the Indiana Department of Local Government Finance. That is a case 31 Northeast 3rd, 552, page 555. And in that particular case, it states that the Indiana Code 36.914.5 authorizes the board as Clark County's legislative body to establish a cumulative capital development fund such as the CCDF, quote, to provide money for any purpose for which the property taxes may be imposed within the county under the authority of several enumerated statutes. Indiana Code section 36-9-14.5-2. So in terms of the notice that was published, as well as the ordinance, which is part of the evidence, that follows the thought process with regards to notice with regards to that. And I don't know that that's vague. I think, in fact, when you look at the notice and read the notice as a whole, it's a notice that states that the county wants to impose a tax paying for all uses set forth in Indiana Code 36-9-14.5. And again, that follows the case. The actual case itself um, was found against Clark County, because in this particular case, Clark County was using the CCDF fund to fund items other than that were in that statute. Clark County was going to use the funds for their rainy day fund and also to pay for insurance. And that was the evidence that they gave. And the DLGF said that's not within the statutory construct. And so therefore, they denied implementation of the tax. I will tell you that in terms of this particular process, I've got a letter which I want to introduce, dated May 30th of 2023, from Scott Stewart, Treasurer of the New Albany Floyd County Building Authority, to the Floyd County Commissioners. And what it does is it lays out a history of everything that we went through with regards to this particular project in terms of the New Albany, in terms of the New Albany Floyd County building that we're trying to rehab and convert to a judicial center, as well as placement of the administrative offices for the county. And again, this has been going on in terms of, in this letter, since August 14th of 2020. So that's 3 years that we've been working, trying to get ourselves to the point of being able to move forward with regards to rehabbing the city county building. Because of its current status, we have great concerns about any additional useful life out of the building. And in fact, the pictures of the city county building that we were shown here at one time shows the nature of a lot of the problems with regards to the building. So this is not something that is new. It's not something that is not been in the public sphere. In fact, we have had numerous public meetings with regards to this. In fact, through this process, we had 2 different groups that were vetted to ultimately scope the particular projects that we have. And the Garmon Group won the scoping project for the city county building, and the Cutter Group for the administrative offices building, which was off Grant Line Road, as mentioned earlier. And, that came with a pretty hefty price tag as we went through the whole process, which the county council ultimately decided that they didn't want to go any further with regards to the project. And so we went back to square one, because the county council continued to ask, how much is this going to cost, and where are we going to get the money from? And so as it turns out, I think the county commissioners decided, well, we need a funding source in order to do this, so that the county council can rest assured that we have this taken care of, because they were concerned, as you heard testimony about, with regards to the funds. The language is not, in my view, vague as stated in the complaint by the petitioners with regards to the notice. In fact, it follows the statutory construct of the Clark County case that I just cited. And in fact, if you look at that statute there, it constrains the uses of the money. And It's not this wide range of uses that apply. In fact, if you go through the statute, I count only 4 potential uses that Floyd County could have. That would be for the voting system purchase fund, for the cumulative bridge fund, for the cumulative building fund for the county courthouse, and a cumulative building fund for the parks. And so I think in terms of from a statutory process, it's very limited in terms of what the use can be. And in fact, we had our hearing, and in fact, in terms of the submission made by the petitioners, this wasn't vague language that was used. In fact, they talk about the specific project language stated by the commissioners at the public meeting as a reason for the establishment of the CCD fund, i.e. renovation of the existing city-county building and our acquisition or construction of a new courthouse or justice center. So even the petitioners are on the same page here with the county commissioners, with our financial consultants, and that's the path that we're headed down. And I did want to point out just another small point in terms of statutory construction with regards to the notice. The statute with regards to notice, Indiana Code 6-1.1-41-3 states that A1, give notice of the proposal to the affected taxpayers, and 2, hold a public hearing on the proposal. And so we gave notice as required under the case law, and I believe the statute. And if you ask the question, well, what notice of the proposal, what's that mean? Well, it's not defined in the statute itself. And so, we go through our normal statutory construction, and, you go to plain meaning. What is the plain meaning of proposal? And if you use the Merriam-Webster definition of the plain meaning, it says, and this is published August 17th, 2023, the meaning of proposal is an act of putting forward or stating something for consideration. And again, that's what we did in our notice, and that is there is a tax that we're going to be considering for the public to be paying for all uses set forth in Indiana Code 36-9-14.5. So I think in regards to legal statutory construction, that our notice and our ordinance most certainly meet the law. And in fact, the conduct that the county has had is not disputed. That's happened over the last 3 years. In fact, it's cited in the petition. I would like to point out that I'm not aware of any testimony from the petitioners that says that the county is intending on using the money outside the statute. And so with there being no contentions by the petitioners that we're using money outside the statute, I think that distinguishes what we're doing in Floyd County than what Clark County did, which was using the CCDF as a vehicle to filter money somewhere other than what Indiana Code 36-9-14.5 allows. It talks about in terms of the petitioners, the proposed CCP tax levy is premature. The commissioners had no specific or even reasonable discernible plan for the stated purpose. And, you know, again, we run into this problem that we're trying to put together a plan in order to get the city county rehabbed and converted to a judicial center, but we don't know how much money we have available to do that. And so what we're trying to do is get the money put together so that we can fine tune the plan. You know, at what point and how specific do you have to be as you go through this process in order to get the CCD funds approved? And statutorily, I don't see that there's a requirement that we have to be any more specific than what we've been. In fact, we had a plan that came almost all the way down to the last vote, which the county didn't pass in order to go forward. The petition here states that the Floyd County Commissioners have a history of overspending. You know, I don't know that that is relevant to what we're talking about today in terms of the use of the CCD funds. And, you know, that is opinion. And that I don't think that opinion, everybody has different opinions with regards to that, not only overspending, but you also heard opinions with regards to that they should modify and they shouldn't be using money here and they should be using money over here. And of course, the county gets that all the time in terms of our public meetings with regards to allocation of funds, and that's discretionary with regards to our elected officials. As we know, it's a republic and not a democracy. And so that's what our public officials make decisions on. They also point out, the petitioners, that there are already sufficient funds in the county's possession to cover the costs of the capital projects under consideration. I am not aware that that's the case, but once again, all of this number 2, number 3, number 4, in terms of their petition, delves into the discretionary product that is produced by our elected officials. And I think it's, again, outside the construct of the statute. The statute provides that the county, if they're going to pass the CCD statute on property taxes and collect that money, that they be used solely for the purposes under 36-9-14.5. That's every intent, and there's nothing that's been said that I've heard that's different from that.
Look,
It's
I'm sorry,
everything
can you hear me?
that I've heard has been.
Can you hear me?
Hold on. Mr.
We're
Fox,
about-
do you have,
We're
hold
about
on,
to get kicked
Mr. Moore.
out of this room. Okay.
Hold on, I just want Mr. Fox to conclude if he hasn't done so. Mr. Fox?
We're about to get kicked out of the conference room. That's why I'm interrupting. They just told us we gotta get out.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't,
Yeah.
okay, I
We're in the
apologize.
library- We're in the library and they gave us warning, we gotta be out of here before 5:30. And the only reason the only thing I wanted to say before we signed off is, if Mr. Fox looks at 36-9-14.5 and looks at the list, 36-9-14 specifically targets refurbishing an existing courthouse or building a new one. That's what our argument was, is if they wanted it to be targeted to what they said it was, there is a specific section in that code that does that. So that's, you know, he could take time to look it up if he wants, and I'll back it up in a writing, but we actually have to get out of the room quick in a minute.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't, forgive me, I didn't realize you were under a time limit, otherwise I would have let you speak. But like I said, everybody has the ability to provide written statements after, so I'll let you go, Mr. Moore, and everybody else there at the library. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for speaking.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll also note just for this, that the recording of today's hearing will be available. We can make it available on the YouTube channel for those that might have to step away from the
Yeah.
hearing for the ending remarks.
yes.
So that you can revisit what you may miss, so.
Sure.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you. Mr. Fox, do you have anything else to add?
Well, just in response to Mr. Moore's comments, I'd like to point out that I am aware of that statute and that we did cite the statute pursuant to case law. And I don't see anywhere in the statutes that it requires us to cite sub-statutes.
That's specific. Where they come, it's not a statute. It's where you go.
Well,
That's
well, I don't want this to turn into a back and forth here. Mr. Moore has made his point. Mr. Fox has made his point. And Mr. Fox, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Since going to the Clark County case that you mentioned, I don't have memory of the case very well. Do you know, based on your reading of the case, do you know if the commissioners in that case adopted a CCD fund or whatever cumulative fund it is, and stated in the ordinance itself that it was for the purpose of the rainy day fund?
I don't remember whether or not the ordinance specifically said that. I don't believe that it did. I think that it was the testimony that was given. And I think in the testimony, the commissioners affirmed, if I remember correctly, affirmed that that's what they were using the money for. That is the rainy day fund and to pay for insurance. Those were the discussions that they had.
And just to refresh my memory, the citation to that case was 31 NE3D. I have a specific page site of 555, but I think there was something else.
No, it's 31 Northeast 3rd, 552.
552, okay. Thank you. I'm gonna
Page
refer back.
555.
Sure. I'm gonna refer back to that. I'll take a look at that. I just want to make, and the reason why I asked that question, Mr. Fox, and I know Mr. Moore and others have left, and so it'd be, they may still be listening, but I think that's kind of, and again, I don't know if the case is on point or not, but it seems like it's pretty analogous to this sort of situation where there was a statute or there was an ordinance that was on paper adopted in accordance with statute, but then there was extraneous evidence or extraneous statements, if you will, outside the four corners of that ordinance that indicated they're going to use it for a different purpose. Even if the purpose of Floyd, I'm not saying Floyd County's purpose here is not in accordance with statute, but I think the point is the taxpayers are hearing something different than what is on the piece of paper. Can you respond?
May have to unmute your mic.
Mr. Fox? No. We can't hear the,
You were just unmuted for a second, then it went back to mute.
yeah.
Are we good now?
Yes.
I can hear you, yes. Mr. Fox, if you can respond. Did you get my question?
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to point out that, again, and I thought that I had said this, and that is, I don't think anybody has said that we intend on using the money
Mhm.
outside of the uses as identified in the statute and purposes. And that's what's key, is that the case law says that you can use it for any of those uses. What, you know, the, I think what we're arguing over is the broadness of the ordinance versus the specificity that, it apparently the petitioners want us to say in the notice. And again, it's only the notice that was in the newspaper that's at issue. It's not anything thereafter, because the specificity was mentioned and discussed in the hearing in terms of the uses of the fund. And there's no testimony anywhere that says that the funds are going to be used other than the uses that have been discussed. I mean, there's nothing on the record that says that. So
You
when
do
you
bring
say
up,
the public, you know, I'm looking at, I don't see anywhere where there's something on the record that would suggest that.
you do bring up a fair point. I was referencing the ordinance, but yeah, the remonstrance was specific to the notice of adoption. I get that, but still, the statement for all uses as set out in 36-9-14.5 is in the same is in both documents. So I just want to make that clear. The question, so I guess kind of staying on the point about the purpose of the fund, you're aware that, and I questioned Mr. Frischi on this, that the maximum allowable rate is phased in over 2 years, correct? Is that your understanding?
That's correct.
Okay. So the ordinance and what's stated in the notice of adoption states that it's 0.0333 cents per $100. But that would be phased in. Half of that would be for the first year and half of that would be the second year. Is that your understanding as well under Indiana law?
It is under Indiana law, which we have to follow. That would be the phase in of the tax.
Okay. And and I think Mr. Frischi, if I remember right, kind of alluded to this before. The purpose of the CCD fund, and you mentioned this yourself, Mr. Fox, is that there are many different purposes for which the CCD fund can be used. And for that, I have two questions. The first one is do you know how long the CCD fund is to last, or how long a CCD fund can be around for under law?
I don't.
Okay. And the
That
next,
would be a consideration in terms of the bond, obviously.
well, sure, I guess. I mean, that would be one of the concerns that I think that kind of, again, I don't want to put words in the remonstrator's mouth, but something that kind of I started thinking about with this hearing based on the testimony I heard is that this judicial center, and there's some other projects as well, would potentially, because they're bonds, they're limited to 20, 25 years or so. The CCD fund would, even after the bonds go away, the CCD fund would still be around, correct?
Again, I don't know if there's a sunset clause.
Okay,
I haven't been asked that question, and
okay,
I can't answer that.
okay. And then I guess the second question is, are you aware if a county or just any unit of government able to adopt the CCD fund, given that the CCD fund can be used for all multiple different purposes, are they still able to adopt a cumulative fund specific to a certain purpose? Like, say, for example, a county adopts a CCD fund and they say they're going to use it for judicial courthouse or courthouse renovation, and then they use, I believe it's 36,915 that is specific, or maybe 36,914, one of those two, that is specific to the judicial courthouse, and they adopt a cumulative fund on top of that. Is that your understanding?
I guess I'm not sure I understand the question.
I guess, is there a potential that even though the county here is adopting a CCD fund for, and they have on record that they're going to use it for a specific purpose, like their judicial center, some point down the road, they're going to adopt another cumulative fund for, say, a courthouse or a judicial center, however you want to term it, and then repurpose the CCD fund for something else? Is that possible?
I would answer that question by saying that it would have to be within the constraints if they were going to change their focus of funding from different sources, however they handle that. Whatever the CCD money that is coming in, though, would have to stay within Indiana Code 36-9-14.5.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that.
May I just state for the record that I'm not aware that you could have more than one CCD fund at a time, if that was what was
So-
being suggested. To my knowledge, we only have one.
Right. So, okay. So just to clarify, so a CCD fund is one type of cumulative fund. But a cumulative fund, as was previously talked about, has a list of different, in the statutes for the CCD fund, it has a list of different statutes that lay out the purposes that you can use a CCD fund for. But those statutes themselves also are with respect for other cumulative funds. And so that was the question I was asking. If you're going to have a CCD fund for a specific purpose, even though you could potentially under law use it for all different other purposes, what's keeping you from adopting a cumulative fund for that specific purpose? And so I'm not talking about two CCD funds here. I'm talking about a CCD fund and then another cumulative fund that's for a specific purpose. Yeah, sure.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no problem. Mr. Fox, I apologize. This might be a bit unfair. You did not talk about the referendum side of it, but I'm going to admit part of the testimony prior concerned me about not pursuing a debt service levy, but then also having the potential that a referendum is not being pursued for the judicial center. Can you comment on that at all? In using the CCD fund in lieu of a debt service levy?
I'm not familiar with any law that prohibits us from taking the path that we're taking in terms of establishing the CCD fund and then bonding off that in order to handle the project. Now,
Okay.
you know, again, you have the statutory provisions that require a remonstrance if there is going to be a remonstrance on a project. But that's not part of this type of financing.
Yeah, and if I may, David, I would just like to clarify, the point was never to avoid a referendum, so to speak. The point of this entire project is to minimize taxpayer impact. In order to do that, we're probably going to have to look at multiple funding sources to fund the debt service of a potential bond. CCD being a piece of that debt service. So most likely from a issuing of a bond perspective, we're going to have to make it an all available revenue pledge of the county. So that in and of itself makes that bond a revenue bond that would not be subject to a property tax referendum threshold.
Okay. It's not, I mean, okay, so I'm, and again, it's kind of unfair to Mr. Fox, because he didn't speak about a referendum, so thank you, Mr. Frischie, for chiming in. I guess I have to ask both of you, because it's kind of on one hand, it has to deal with the bonding and the controlled project. On the other hand, it's a matter of statutory construction. Indiana law, if memory serves, states that a bond or lease or project funded by a bond or lease payable from a property tax that is exempt from the maximum levy limits is subject to either a petition or remonstrance or a referendum if it exceeds the cost thresholds laid out in statute. I believe it's 6-1.1-20- section's going to escape me. I want to say one. There are actually multiple ones that you have to cite to. Isn't the CCD fund exempt from the maximum levy limits? Or the levy for the CCD fund exempt from the maximum levy limits?
Correct.
Okay. And so how would that not qualify for a referendum? Because it's a property tax levy that's exempt from the maximum levy limits.
So once again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm relying on advice provided to me by bond counsel and underwriting firms when looking at marketing a bond and marketing a potential bond. I'm being told too that, as I said, that's one of the reasons why we didn't specifically pledge the CCD in the ordinance to this repayment, because by opening up as an all available revenue pledge, we can use various sources of revenue for repayment of the bonds.
Okay.
The intent is to use CCD, but at this time, we're still to the point where we need to iron out more things before we can specifically know how much of each fund we're going to need to use to make the debt service.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks for that, Mr. Frischie. Mr. Fox, if you have anything to add on that question.
I don't.
Because it was, and I wanted to make sure that you had the chance to chime in, because that is a matter of statutory construction. But just to kind of reiterate what Mr. Frischie said, correct me, you relied on guidance from bond counsel with respect to the particular pursuing referendum or not. I understand there's, privileges and all that stuff. I don't want you to necessarily violate those.
And I do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So I think the last person I have is Denise Conkle. Give you an opportunity one more time.
Sure.
To speak.
I do have a few things to say.
Okay.
And I'll keep it short because I know we've
Okay.
been in a long time here.
Right.
I don't think there's any dispute from anybody that the city county building needs renovation. It is a 60-year-old building that has had literally nothing done to it. Even the repairs that have been done are minimal. And if you would like, we can send you pictures of things that will just indicate to you that there's no way that anybody can deny that this needs to be done. The other thing that I would say is we do not have a revenue stream to do this with. Whether people think that we've been frivolous or not, this is where we're at. And I would say we have not, at least as long as I've been here. We have been very diligent and working with the Reedy Group and putting 5-year plans together and trying to understand our financial situations in all of our funds. So but I do want to empathize with the taxpayers. The timing of this is not good. We're coming off of a property tax increase. It has nothing to do with what we've done here in the county. As Matt said earlier, our rates have stayed stagnant. And one of the reasons why our rates have stayed stagnant is because of the hospital sale. And I don't know if people know that or not, but we are getting a spend rate every year because a large chunk of that money was put into a legacy foundation that we draw a spend rate on every year. And because of that, we have been able to keep tax rates low, the eighth lowest I think we're actually the fifth lowest if you actually combine all the taxes. So those hospital funds have been put to good use, and I think we've done a really good job with the hospital funds. So while I empathize with the taxpayers, and while I understand that the timing of all of this is unfortunate, we have to do as leaders of our county what is the right thing to do. And there's no doubt in my mind that this is the right thing to do, to move forward, to put a CCD tax in place. And I mean, we have done multiple public meetings telling people how much this is going to cost them on their property taxes. I mean, for an average household in Floyd County, which is $179,000 annually, or $179,000 value, $179,000 value, they would get an $11.91 increase on their taxes. $300,000 home is about $50. It's not a huge tax increase, but I understand on top of everything else, it's burdensome. And so I guess with that, the other thing that I wanted to say is we are looking at different options, like Jim said, like Matt said, I think several people have said. We had something on the table that got turned down, and we are back to the drawing table, and we are looking at ways to do this within a more not spending as much money. So, and we've got some options on the table right now. So I think we are being fiduciarily responsible here. But it's something that just has to be done, needs to be done. And sometimes the right answers are the hard answers, but that's where we're at in Floyd County. So I'll just leave it at that. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Just looking over my notes here. Hold on. I guess the one question I have for you, Ms. Conkle, is with respect to the CCD fund rate itself. Where is the council at with the budget process? I know we're kind of getting to the stage where the county has to adopt its budget for pay 24. Where is it at right now in the process?
I think our budget adoption date is October the 16th, if I remember right. I can look at my calendar. Yes. We are getting close.
Okay. Have the budget forms been developed at this point, like finalized at this point?
The Reedy Group is working on developing them as we speak. I think actually Tim is on the line with us. He's working on that for us.
Okay.
And as Matt mentioned, we're looking at a $1.8 million deficit for next year.
Mhm.
We have a little bit of cash surpluses, but we're going to eat through those next year. And so we're looking at a very small judicial lit tax that possibly will be passed.
Okay.
It was passed, and we're looking at some, yeah.
Okay, so. And the budget forms themselves have not been submitted to the DLGF, right? Because there hasn't even been an adoption yet. Is that right?
No. Tim, is that
Okay.
correct? Are you on the line?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Just, and the reason why I ask is it really does come down to the rate. What is the council proposing to do for the Form 4? You don't have to answer that question. And I guess but that's kind of where my thought was with the 0.0333 rate. Again, I'm not going to make any decisions on the merits of the remonstrance at this point. But these are things that we're going to have to think through before the final decision is made.
So can I respond to that just for a moment? And Matt, if
Go
you
ahead.
need
Go
to
ahead.
help me here, but from what I understand, the 0.0033 will give us about $0.7 million in 2025, not in 2024. About half of that in 2024.
Okay.
I think what we've calculated is that depending on the rate and soft cost involved, we're talking about a bond of maybe $22 to $25 million. Is that right, Matt? That's a pretty significant scale back from the original project already. And we're looking at ways to make that work. We really are. I just want to mention that to you because or less. Yeah. We're definitely looking at options.
Okay, so the council, so you mentioned page 25. For page 24, what is the council considering in terms of receipts for the CCD fund levy? Is it based on 0167 or 0333?
It's half. I've been told it's approximately half of the total rate. So I think it's right around 700,000 thereabouts. Is that right, Matt? Do you remember?
Tim may be better to answer that. He may have the most updated sheet in front of him.
I think I probably have it. I believe that's the right number.
Okay, all right, thank you. Can I get Tim just to give me his name, his name, first and last name, just so I have it on the record that he's commented.
Yeah. Yes, Tim Stricker, Reedy Financial Group, and that is correct. Now that's based off of 2022 pay 2023 net assessed value. It'll be roughly 750,000. We don't have the 23 pay 24 net assessed value yet. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. I don't have any further questions for Ms. Conkle and Ms. Stricker, or Mr. Stricker. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's everybody I had listed in favor. So it's almost about 5 minutes to 6. Just gonna have some concluding remarks. This should not take long. First of all, thank you to everybody who attended this hearing, both of those on behalf of the county, their counsel, their advisors, also those who are remonstrating, who are in remonstrance, who attended. I don't see. I don't know if they're on now, but just have it on the record. I appreciate their input as well, and appreciate their opportunity. Take advantage of their opportunity to speak. So again, written evidence, in addition to what's already been provided to me before and during this hearing, must be submitted to me in writing no later than the end of the day on September 13th. So that's 2 Wednesdays from now. I'll mention before, you may submit it either directly to me by email or by mail. I believe the information is included in the chat box. I do ask, however, that you try to submit it via email if possible, just so that it ensures timely receipt of evidence and that it reduces the amount of paper that has to be moved around through the office. If you have to resort to mailing evidence, we'll consider it timely if received by the department on September 13. If by email, it must also be the department by September 13. Actually, you know what? I'm going to call an audible. If it's by mail, we ask that it be postmarked by September 13. Postmarked by September 13. We know how the mail moves sometimes. But if it's by email, it must be to me by September 13. So again, thank you all for your testimony and courteous attention and your patience. This was one of the longer hearings that we've had in quite a while, so I appreciate everybody's and the technology and how things may go. We appreciate your patience here. I will, after receipt of all evidence, within the deadline, I'll consider the issues raised and evidence presented and make a recommendation to the Commissioner of the Department of Local Government Finance. He will then issue an order to be provided to the county auditor within a reasonable time after the hearing and receipt of additional evidence. What I think what we'll also do is make the what's been provided to us in writing, make that available on the department website. If there are no objections for us doing so, these things are public records, so they're subject to public records disclosure laws anyway. But if there's no objection, we would like to make that available, just so that everybody has access to the information that the department has received. So, are there any questions before I conclude?
You didn't give us a specific date for the ruling, but we have our budget adoption hearings on October the 16th. Will we have the ruling prior to that, I guess is my question.
So let's see, that'd be 2 weeks from today for last submission of evidence. We'll make all valiant effort to have it done by the end of September. Not making any promises, but that's what we're going to shoot for.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none. Thank you all. Oh, sorry. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All right. Again, thank you all for your testimony and patience. With that, this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.